One of the issues that leadership faces today in terms of what this 21st century will offer is the relationship between leadership and science. It's only, as I understand it, within the last 50, 60 years that science has really begun to impact on how people think about leadership. There's a beautiful book by Margaret Wheatley entitled Leadership and the New Science, which I want to recommend to you. What she shows there very clearly is that quantum theory, when we begin to understand it properly, provides all kinds of insights into leadership. One of the core insights there is the element of surprise in the unfolding of situations, which we have to be able to deal with if we are to be authentic leaders. Unless as a leader you can deal with surprise, you are inevitably going to be tempted to dictatorship, because you're going to want to stop anything that surprises you. And that's just one example of how science is challenging and teaching us about what leadership is. Part of that, of course, and any genuine scientist knows this, you end up living by faith. And Dr. Ferguson and I were mentioning that earlier on. You end up living by faith because you have to be willing to go through those moments when you do not know. And the authentic scientist is the person who is looking for and totally open to the aha moment. But that aha moment, what the Greeks call the eureka moment, very often takes a very long time to come. And unless you're willing to live by faith, you're not going to be able to live it. Dr. Ferguson talked earlier on about this being a country where there should be no poverty. I've heard that line often, and I want to challenge him on it. Because I think when we say that, we refer to material poverty. But my experience in the places where I am now working, especially in the light of the efforts that have been made to alleviate poverty, we talked about eradicating poverty. A young man sent me a text of a paper he's done eradicating poverty in the 21st century. And a lot of people talk about that. Material poverty is one thing, and we can throw money at material poverty. But there is a deeper poverty at work in, I say, all our communities. And the example of that I see is when you talk to young men on the block and you say to them, what are your dreams? And they have no dreams. What's a dream? The kind of thing that I took for granted when I was a teenager going to secondary school. I want to be this, I want to have 6 children, I wanted this, I wanted that, Young men today have none. Part of that is the marijuana syndrome, I believe. If anybody wants to question me on that, okay. But I really believe part of that is that marijuana takes away all that motivates you, deadens your spirit in many ways. Some people, it may open up their heads, I don't know. But for a lot of the young men, it deadens their spirit. But beyond that is this inability to dream and an inability to even engage with the things that enable you to discover who you are. And that, for me, is the depths of poverty. And you don't deal with that simply by throwing anything at it. It takes a very long journey. And when we have young people, and this really bothers me today, when we have young people whose fathers have been killed, or who have watched their own brothers being killed, and I'm dealing now with one young man who has seen his 3 brothers killed, and he's dead. He sits opposite to me, and I ask him about some of the trauma symptoms that he's showing, and he just folds his arm. He can't engage you at all. How do you lead people like that? How do you lead people like that when their day-to-day experience has been, for the last 5 years, dead bodies on the street? And yet, these people have been led. And they've been led by men who understood something of that. And I refer here especially now to the so-called gang leaders whom we decry so often in this society.